Lynn Bruce considers herself a very ordinary person. She's a retired massage therapist, mother of 4, grandmother of 8, and wife of a retired librarian turned yoga teacher. She's lived in small towns most of her life. She's always followed the rules. She describes herself as quiet and nice. While a very ordinary person, Lynn has also lived an extraordinary life. She's now a late blooming against the odds cross-country cyclist. The first time she said yes to bigger things was in 1999 in honor of her 60th birthday, when she signed on for her first transcontinental bicycle tour. In rides since, she crossed the US on different routes and arrived at both her 50th and 60th high school reunions by bicycle, having ridden from Northfield, Minnesota to Cheyenne, Wyoming. When she went from biking across town to biking across the country, Lynn transformed her inner and outer sense of possibility. Today, here to share her message that it's never too late to say yes to bigger things, please welcome Lynn Bruce.
That's how I like to play. I've learned that I can do more than I ever knew. My rides are never fast, yet all the miles go past. I always come in last. Still, I can bike, and I feel so lucky that I am able to bike and that I found something that I like so very much. In my life now, my biking is my exercise, my mental health therapy, and my way of being active as I age. I never would have thought that once I started these long rides that it would have such an impact, such an opening for my life. My bike stories are just a metaphor for how life can open up. Each of us has our own story. Do you have a bucket list? Well, wait a minute. I want to change the question. Do you have a list that I wish I'd a list? You know, the list of things that hangs around and plagues you, the list that you certainly don't want hanging around at the end of your life. Let's take a few moments here. What's on it for you? Just think for a few moments. What's on it for you? Whatever it is, it's not too late. It might be some adventure that you've had on the back burner, kind of given up hope on that. Might be that. It might be some project that you're finishing. Maybe your genealogical material, you're finally getting it together so you can pass it on to your family. Or it might be reaching out and trying to mend some sort of break in relationship that's been hanging out there for years. You know what it is. And whatever it is, do it now. We know that it's never too late to start. You just have to begin. You have to begin. Every year, almost every year since 1999, I've ridden a long bicycle trip. And those have always been a big challenge. And I have learned out of each one of those. They've been a very powerful affirmation in my life. Now, how did this at that time in 1999, late middle aged person, this lady, this wife, this mom, this grandmother, this very non-athletic person get started in this? I have two birthdays that are important in my bicycle life. Cheyenne, Wyoming, the year that I turned 12 on March 13th, and I got my very first bicycle ever. I was from a money-strapped family. Mom said I had to wait until I was big enough to ride an adult bike before I got a bike because they could never buy me another one. So this bike would have to do me forever. I learned to ride. I had such fun. Oh, I had fun. I rode on the little streets in my town, rode with friends, and it was just fun. Then, when I got to high school, in those olden days, it was not cool for girls to be riding a bicycle. So I quit. Northfield, Minnesota. The fall before I was going to turn 60 in 99, I started thinking about this decade birthday that was coming. And it seemed like it was very important that I mark this birthday in some way. I didn't usually mark decade birthdays, but this one, 60, seemed big. And actually, at that time, I thought being 60 was going to be old. Now that I'm 82, I have a very different perspective. But that's what I thought at that time. I thought that unless my life shifted a little bit, that when I got to be 60, I would just be going downhill for the rest of my life, down to the end. And I didn't want that. I didn't want a birthday party. I wanted something that would seem like a celebration and a challenge, and that I could manage, and that it would be fun, and that it would be mine. See, underneath, I was feeling kind of flat and as though I had no possibilities. My life looked nice and shiny on the top, and underneath, I wasn't feeling so good. It didn't make any sense. I lived in a lovely, lovely town. I had good friends. Our 4 children were off in the world living their own lives. I had a very successful massage therapy business. With my colleague Carla, we were the very first massage therapists in Northfield, Minnesota, in the middle 80s, at a time when massage was very suspect. People thought that we were headed into prostitution. Well, that's not what we were doing. My referrals often came from the medical community. I was highly respected in what I was doing. I had a good marriage. When Bob and I were in our 40s, we had had a really awful brink of divorce breakup. It had been terrible, terrible. And we'd been able to come back together, establish a marriage that was far better than we had started with, and things were good. So it didn't make any sense, this restless feeling, but it was there. I didn't have any idea what I wanted this adventure celebration to be. I just had adjectives. One day I was looking in the back of a magazine, where there are those little black and white ads, and I saw one that said, cross country bicycle trip led by Woman Tours. Woman Tours is a company that does bike trips for women. Cross country bicycle trip riding from California to Florida. Women over 50, starting on March 13th. Ha! March 13th. March 13th is my birthday. This company was already planning my birthday celebration, so I signed up. Yep, I made that commitment. I had signed up in October. I live in Minnesota, so I could ride outside for a while, but most of my training was in the basement on a stationary bike that was being discarded by the bike store. And during those months of riding, I got lots of mailings from the Woman Tours company. They were encouraging me. They were telling me how I could train. They were telling me where I needed to be when and what I needed to bring. And they were telling me what I needed for clothing. And they said, I had to have bike shorts. Well, I didn't want to buy bike shorts. Bike shorts are so tight. And besides, a lot of times it looks like there's a diaper underneath. Besides, they are expensive. Bike shorts are expensive. I wasn't going to buy those. Nope. I did what I do in some parts of my life. I got creative. Yep. I took a pair of sweatpants, old sweatpants. I cut off the legs. I sewed the extra fabric in the crotch. I made my own bike shorts. And yes, it did look like I had a diaper underneath. Carla, my colleague, said, Lynn, specific sports clothing is made for specific sports needs. You may not understand why you need bike shorts, but you can trust that your ride will be far more efficient and far more comfortable if you have bike shorts. Thank you, Carla. I bought 2 pairs of bike shorts, 2 jerseys in high-vis colors, a screaming yellow bike windbreaker jacket, and that amount of clothing has been all I've needed for most of the bike trips that I have been on. So glad she told me that. You probably had this kind of experience, that when you sign up for something new, something you've never done before, a totally new experience, fear rushes in. Fear rushes in. Expect the fear. Don't let it stop you. Fear was rushing in for me in the middle of the nights. What ifs, the what ifs. What if this is a big mistake? What if I can't do it? What if I shouldn't be spending that much time and that much money? What if? Finally, in the middle of another night, there was a different question. What's the bottom line here? Turns out, bottom line had 3 parts. 1, I needed to be able to ride a bicycle. I could do that. 2, I needed to pay for my bike trip. Well, I'd already done that. I'd paid in full. And 3, I needed to be willing to give it my all. That was my plan. I was all in and ready to do everything I could for this bike trip. So I guess I was going to be okay. I was still nervous. The day I left Northfield, my friend Linda came to the door with a little gift. She gave me a gift, and then Linda gave me a big hug. And we all know what a gift a big hug is. Is there anything we better at this time? Well, it was important then too. Linda hugged me and I burst into tears. You don't have to go, you know, said Linda. You don't have to go. Yes, I do. I need to go for me. And that was true. A few days later in San Diego, when my sister Jean dropped me at the rendezvous spot, I cried again. I was about to do something I had never done before. Until I started training for this trip, the farthest I had ever ridden was 8 miles around my little town. And now I was going to be riding from California to Florida. How was that going to work out? And I was joining 26 other women, all of us over 50. None of us knew each other at all. We were all absolute strangers, and none of us had ever been on a long bike trip before. The whole thing was new. That first night orientation, the leader told us, this journey will change your life. Oh, right, I said inside my head, rolled my eyes, as did most of the other women. That became our joke for the next 60 days. Has your life changed yet? Have you changed yet? We started on March 13th, my birthday. And it's a wonder some of us weren't taken out that first day. When we made a turn from a 2-lane road, a left-hand turn from a 2-lane road onto a 4-lane road, most of us didn't know which lane you turn from on a bicycle and what lane you aim for. A few miles on down the road, a roundabout. I was from Minnesota. This was 1999. I had never seen a roundabout. It was very clear how I got in, just keep on and get in, but getting out, I went around and around several times before I finally got a clue on which was my exit. We were riding east out of San Diego, up into the foothills, and they were getting pretty steep, and it was getting pretty hot, and it was hot, and it was hard work, and it was sweaty, and it wasn't fun. I thought, why did I think this would be a great thing for my birthday? And on my side of the road, there was a fairly steep ravine. I definitely need to pee. How do I squat on a steep ravine? Do I face downhill, even though I'm slightly afraid of heights? Or do I face uphill with my large center of gravity downhill? Figured it out. Learned a lot in a lot of ways. On that trip, there was emphasis on riding all the miles. Many of the women were using that trip as a fundraiser. I was not, but I was as committed to riding all the miles as anybody else. And out of the 3,053 miles, there were only 5 miles I did not ride. And those 5 miles were a very big lesson. That lesson came on the second day. Our route was to be down a steep canyon along a major highway, had a very big shoulder, plenty of shoulder. And we were told that it was often windy and it was gusty, and there were, so to watch out for the gusts, the side winds. That morning, I was standing with 2 other women. We were eating our breakfast, and they were so frightened about the wind. They were talking about the wind. And after I got to know them later on the trip, I realized they were always frightened about the wind. But this morning, they were just terrified. They were saying, we can't ride down that road because we'll get caught by a crosswind and we'll be pushed into the line with a semi, and we can't do that. We can't do that. No, the thing to do is put our bikes on top of the little sag wagon and then get in that car and be driven down to the bottom, down those 5 miles to the bottom of the canyon, and that's where we get out, and that's where we start our ride. They were so frightened, and they were so convincing that I thought, that's what I need to do too. And so I did. I put my bike on top of that car. I got inside the car. I was driven to the bottom of the canyon. That's where I started my ride that day. I'll never know how strong those crosswinds were. I do know that I wish I had tried before I gave up. I learned that when you align yourself with fear, it very quickly becomes your own. So watch for that. Our little band of 27 women were becoming stronger. We were becoming a cohesive group, pedaling our way across the US, and we were working hard. It was so we were riding in a kind of a, a bubble, a bike bubble of hard work. It was so single focused. That's one of the things I really like about bike trips. They are so single focused. You're starting and then you get to wherever the day's destination is. I really like that. I really like that. One day, some of us stopped for ice cream. A woman about our age came over and said, "What are y'all doing out here?" "We're riding our bicycles. We're riding our bicycles from California to Florida, all the way across the United States. Under our own steam, we're riding our bicycles." "Oh, you poor dears, you poor, poor dears." She didn't get it. She didn't get it. She didn't get it that we were doing this by choice and that hard work of getting there under our own steam was so satisfying. It was, that hard job was always almost becoming a joy. At the very least, it was very satisfying. And no, it wasn't satisfying or joyful in the midst of the hard parts. But at the end of the day, what we had covered, that was good. I have a limerick that I wrote that I think talks about this. "Though miles of long biking are tiring, I often can find them inspiring. The work that I do reminds me it's true. Adventure is effort requiring." I've learned a lot. I learn a lot on every trip. One of the things I've learned is if you've got a big hill coming, don't look at the top of the hill. That's too discouraging. And you know what I've realized? Yes, I'm going to tell you about that hill. But what I've realized is that the things I learn about my bike trip, from my bike trips, the things I learn on my bike seat applies to my off bike life too. So that big hill might be an actual physical hill. It might be a task. Don't look at the top of the hill. Look a ways ahead, just off to the edge of the pavement, and pick some marker, a tree, a fence post, a bush, a something, and make your way to that marker. And when you get there, cheer yourself in your mind. You might have a big cheering section in your life. Make sure your voice is part of the cheering section. It's important to cheer yourself on. You get to that marker and then you look ahead another ways, you find another one and you repeat until you get to the top of the hill. I've learned that short distances add up to get the job done. Something that I relearn every time is that one day at a time moves me to my destination. The effort that I put in day by day gets me where I need to go. Good off bike lesson. Keep at it. You'll get there. Now I've ridden about 30,000 bike trip miles. I've ridden 3 sides of the US. The southern part, that's the southern tier, that California to Florida. The northern, that's Washington to Maine. Down the west side, down the Pacific coast. I have not ridden down the East Coast, and that's what I was going to do with a group in 2020, but all the bike trips were canceled. Haven't done that. I've ridden a diagonal across the US, that's the Trans Am from Virginia to Oregon. I've ridden down the Mississippi from Lake Itasca to Hannibal, Missouri, around Lake Superior, from Northfield, Minnesota to Cheyenne, Wyoming for 2 high school reunions, my 50th and my 60th. And let me tell you, it is very cool to ride your bike to any kind of reunion. And unless you're going to the same reunion that Kaya is going to, you'll probably be the only one there on your bike. I've ridden from Northfield to Bloomington, Indiana, with a 16-year-old grandson and my husband, his grandfather, who was our SAG. Now, SAG stands for support and gear. So Bob, my husband, was the support and person for us. Ernie was 16 years old. He was a strong teenage boy. He rode fast. I said, Ernie, you don't have to ride beside me, but if I look down the road, I need to be able to see you. And if you look over your shoulder, which I want you to do several times, I want you to be able to see me. Well, that worked for about 20 minutes. And then it was clear to all 3 of us that we needed to make different parameter on how we were riding. So Ernie could ride as fast as he wanted until he got to the intersection of highway and highway, whatever that was, that identifier that we had agreed on. And Ernie was to wait there until Grand Bob came, and then they were to wait there until I came. Well, Grand Bob was a SAG. He was driving the car, so he was always already there when Ernie got there. So those 2 guys had 10 or 15 minutes several times a day, just the 2 of them, while they waited for me. The bond that developed out of that was precious, precious, and continues. And I'm sure it's a lifelong one that was nurtured in a way that we wouldn't have even thought out of a bike trip. I've ridden an 800-mile loop across the top of Lake Michigan in Alaska, Golden Circle, Haines to Skagway, some unsupported rides with Bob here in Minnesota and in Wisconsin, twice in Great Britain, and I've gotten to ride the Wyoming State Ride 3 times. Wyoming State Ride is called the Tour de Wyoming, and they have a lottery for their 350 slots. 350 isn't big, but compared to other states, RAGBRAI, the last time they had RAGBRAI, there were 20,000 riders. So I've gotten a winning ticket 3 times. Then I've never ridden in a group that big, and biggest I'd ever been with was 30. But I figured I knew the basics, I knew that you got up really early, ate some food. Well, first, before you ate some food, you got your stuff to the truck and you ate some food, and then you got on your bicycle and you rode way over to the right-hand side of the road very carefully, very carefully. I was familiar with those things. What I was not familiar with, lines. Long lines for food. Long lines for the porta potty, the Biffy. Standing in line as I wait for the Biffy. Line is so long that it really seems iffy. Will it move fast enough with enough speed that I can attend to this pressure-filled need? Oh, in the Midwest, there are cornfields. In the Midwest, there are cornfields. In some states, small towns. The Wyoming prairies have sight lines so clear. I'd better wait right here. On one of those Wyoming rides, I was invited to be a speaker in the evening. And I told about starting to do rides when I was 60 years old, how I had never done anything like that before, how I didn't know anybody who was on the ride. We were all complete strangers, how I was scared and I cried and I went anyway. The next morning, I was riding up a Wyoming hill that was very quickly becoming a mountain, and a cyclist came by fast, glanced over her shoulder, made a U-turn, came alongside. Are you that lady who talked last night? It's hard to tell with helmets and dark glasses. Yeah, I talked last night. I want to tell you something. After your talk, I called Henry. He's my son. He's 12 years old. He's in Denver. Henry is scheduled to go to camp today. He told me last night he's not going to go. He's scared. He doesn't know anybody. He's never been to camp. Henry started to cry. I could hear him on the phone snuffling. I told him, Henry, I heard this lady talk tonight. When she was 60 years old, she took her first long bicycle trip. She was scared. She didn't know anybody. She'd never done anything like that before. She was scared and she cried and she went anyway. I knew Henry was still listening because I could still hear him snuffling. I'll think about it. I'll think about it. And Henry hung up. The next day, I am riding up another Wyoming hill, becoming a mountain. Here came that cyclist. She zipped along the side and she said, I want to tell you what happened. I called Henry last night. He was at camp. He told me that if that lady who was 60 years old, didn't know anybody, never done that before, she was scared, she cried, and she went anyway. I figured if that lady who was 60 years old could do that, I could go to camp. Folks, tell your stories. You never know where your stories are going to land and how they're going to encourage somebody. And they're certainly going to interest people. Things that you've tried, adventures you've had and you've done, things you've tried and completed, things you've tried and you failed. Tell that. And you tried again, and this time you got it. Or you tried again and you failed again. So you moved on from that. But having tried and failed, you knew more about what's going on in life than you did before. Tell your story, folks. It's precious. There are people who will appreciate hearing it. Make sure you tell it. Another time, I heard from someone that a 90-year-old lady had told her friend, after I heard Lynn talk last night, I decided that I'm going to take my walker into the hall every day and I'm going to go a little farther. And I'll go a little farther and a little farther And finally, I'll get to the door and somebody will hold the door open for me and I'll go outside on my own. That's what I want for me and for all of us, to stretch for ways to keep life in our days. That's a pretty good motto. Put it on your mirror. Stretch for ways to keep life in our days. I'm 82 now. I've changed over these years. And I'm still biking. Yeah, I'm still biking. Every spring when I go out to start riding outside again, it takes me longer to get back in shape than it did. I'm a beginner every year. I'm a beginner. And finally, I get some strength and some stamina, not back to where I had some other years, but to where I can have now. And I am grateful for that. My training is different. It used to be if I was going on a trip and I needed to ride, I knew that if I could ride 40 miles comfortably, if I had to, I could ride 60 miles in a day. And now, if I see that there's a 60-mile day listed, I need to train doing 60 miles. I have to do that. My left thumb gets too sore to shift, so now I have a new gearing system. It's called a 111, and I just shift with just my right hand. That's a good change, yep. My bicycle, which I like very much, has a high crossbar. In the olden days, you would have called it a boy's bike. And I get on it by swinging my leg over the top. That's getting harder. I had a drop seat put on. I can reach under the nose of the seat, pull the lever. The seat goes down about 4 inches. That makes it much easier to get off and especially to get on. I miss route cues more and more. If I'm riding in an area where there are a lot of choices for streets and roads to take, different paths and different turns and a lot of directions, I ride with somebody so that I don't get lost. I've been able to manage those things, and I will keep on managing as much as I can because it matters to me. I saw a quote recently from Sir Edmund Hillary. Remember, he was the first person to climb Mount Everest. And his quote was something like this: "It's not the mountaintops we conquer. It's our minds that tell us we can't." Two times in my life, I've been part of a bike trip where someone lost their life. The first was on the Northern Tier. A woman cyclist turned left into the motel driveway as a car coming out was turning right. They collided. They were both at fault, which was absolutely irrelevant. The woman was killed. The other was on one of the Wyoming rides, and a very experienced cyclist fell and died. Those things, it's horrible. It's just horrible. You never want anything like that to happen. It's horrible. And death can be a motivator for living life. After that accident on the Wyoming tour, the woman who's run those tours for 20 years finally took her dream trip to New Zealand. Those incidences have made me extremely careful. I am very careful when I'm riding. But they have not made me want to quit riding my bicycle. In fact, now when I go on a long trip, I tell my family, if I die on this trip, know that I died doing something I love. And that would be the best, in my mind, that would be the best for each of us. That when we come to our final days, we've been doing what we love. Now, on a lighter note, back to that first ride and that mantra from the leader that said, "This journey will change your lives." When we got to St. Augustine, Florida, which was where we were going to finally get to the Atlantic Ocean, our journey to the ocean was pretty ceremonial. Really, it was great. We all rode together. We all rode together through St. Augustine, and we didn't ride together on that ride. We were all strung out according to our speeds, according to how, what we wanted to. So we didn't ride together. But that day we did. We were this group arriving in St. Augustine, going to the Atlantic Ocean. And there was a police car who led us to the path. And the police car even had a siren going very quietly. And the police car led us to the path. And we got to the path. And it had been lined with little black and white, Indy 500 kind of flags. It was very celebrative. So we each wheeled our bicycle down the path between these flags, down to the Atlantic Ocean. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. And then the second part of the ritual, which we had put our back tires into the Pacific Ocean. And now we were putting our front tires into the Atlantic Ocean. We had ridden all the way across the US on our bikes. Wow. It was so exciting. And I thought, this has been a wonderful trip. I haven't changed. A couple of years later, or maybe it was a couple of bike trips later, I asked Rob, one of my sons, have I changed since I started doing these bike rides? Rob thought, you have a greater sense of possibility. And that's true. I do have a greater sense of possibility. And that's a change. That has changed, and it has expanded my life. I wish I could say I had become fearless, but that's not at all true. I still get scared before every big bike trip. Days can be hard now. Sometimes it feels like I'm riding with a flat tire, maybe even uphill. Have you ever had that experience? Flat tire feels like a flat tire in your life? Right. Kaya, would you put that card up now, please, on the screen? There it is. I had this card made because after some bike trips, I started thinking, what keeps me going? What keeps me on task? No, I don't want that. I don't want to say on task because that sounds pretty, I don't want that. What keeps me going? And it turns out that there are these 5 things. And what I also realize is that it's not only bike trips where they work for me. I apply them to my off-bike life, and they work there too. So the first thing is to make a commitment. The second, get help. Get all the help you need. And you know that is a very, very big deal. It is hard to ask for help. You have to be really, really brave to ask for help. Be brave like that. Ask. You need it? Ask. 3, find humor in the hard stuff. We all know that laughing or even smiling can help lighten the load. 4, connect with others. Connect with others. Those bonds, those acquaintances, they make our life rich. And 5, stick with your commitment. Recommit as often as you need to, and sometimes it's several times an hour. Recommit. You know, days are kind of like a metaphorical bike trip. That day's efforts gets us to that day's destination. Cool, huh? A bike ride every day, metaphorical. Kaya, you can take it down now. Thanks. So we get to live our day. We do get to live our day. And taking on what we think we can do and what we're not sure we can do bigger. Those things open our horizons. There are so many ways to engage, so many ways to engage, to keep engaging while aging. Things are possible for us. Yes, I know they are. Yes, I think we can. Yes, we can. I'm out here riding my bike. And when I need to, I will ride a trike. Is it worth all the hard work? I wonder as I go. And then when my ride ends, I know it is so. Here is a question for me. Why do I do this? It sets my soul free. Thank you, thank you. I do want to tell you that I am looking for places to give the talks. So if you're part of any other organizations or groups that are bringing in speakers, if you will please put me in touch with them. And you know, and a contact for me is in your church newsletter. That is the most fabulous newsletter I have ever seen. And Kaya just put in a phone number. That's great. You can call me. Call me. Please do. Please do. Thank you very much, everybody.
And thank you. And I do think we have, it looks like one question, well, actually Kaya put in, and it was just your website. Yes, I think I can. And
Yeah.
I do agree. If we say, I think I can, an awful lot happens in our life. I do agree.
Right. Right.
If people have questions, please put them in the chat box for us. I think it was a very encouraging speech. Thank you.
I think people can turn on their videos too if you'd like to see each other.
Yes, that's true.
Yes, I see the question that says, do I have another trip soon? And the answer is yes, I do. And I'm preparing for that on the 1st of August. I'm joining a group. We will ride in the state of New York along, it's called the Empire State Trail Ride. And evidently New York State has made contiguous chunks of trail that have existed within the state. And so I'm going for 3 weeks. It will be about 800 miles, and I'm working hard to make sure that I'm strong enough, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. Do Women Tours still? Oh, absolutely. Yay, yay, yay. Women Tours is a great organization, and check them out. When if you ever actually are in touch with them beyond just reading their website, tell them Lynn Bruce sent you. But yes, I certainly recommend Women Tours. Yeah.
You training now, Lynn, for the August trip? That was
I
my
am.
question.
Yes, I am training for the August trip. Yeah. And I saw a question that says, what kind of bike do I ride? I ride a salsa bike, which is one that's made in Minnesota. And I like it very much. And I think that the most important thing about a bicycle is the person who's doing the pedaling and who's really committed to doing the pedaling. And in addition, I will say that having your bike in good mechanical condition is very, very important. And having it fit you, having it fitted, your seat is the right height, your handlebars the right angle, and all those things, they just make so much difference. So do those things. You're worth having it done. Yeah. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here. Do I have photos too? I have some photos, but I am so technically inept. And when I am speaking at a place where I'm in charge of my own stuff, I don't do any photos because I need to keep it really simple. So that's, I don't use photos.
Lynn, it was featured in a Thrivent magazine article, and I can send out that PDF. The best way to do that may be if people email me and ask for Lynn's promo, I can send that out. I could maybe put it on the website too. I have to look it up.
Thank you. That was lots of fun to be featured there. This is the Blue Cross Blue Shield publication that they put out for people for whom Blue Cross Blue Shield is their Medicare supplement. And I saw an article that's about a guy in his late 70s who was skiing, and it said at the end, if you know anybody who's doing anything interesting, let us know. And boy, I was really audacious. I wrote and I said, this is what I'm doing, and I think I might be interesting. And they thought so too. So the person who wrote the article was very skilled, and the photographer was fun. And so thanks. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, my new friends. You're all my new friends, and I love that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the questions that we had. And I see one comment a person made was wonderful and inspirational. And I totally agree. And now I will turn the mic over to Pastor Anna-Britt so that she can make any announcements that she has and also do our closing. So thank you very much.
Yes. The first big event will be Sunday, not this Sunday, coming Sunday, but next Sunday, when we will have opening of the church. To be, you do not have to schedule an appointment. You can just come at 11 o'clock. We are beginning in-person service. And since we do not know who are vaccinated or not, we have to still use a mask, especially when we are singing, because we are singing too. So I'm looking forward to that, but the in-person services is still going as usual. So it's much work for me and and the and we need volunteers to be active in church now in many things. So think about that.